Okay, picture this. You've got this incredibly talented nurse, maybe from the Philippines, maybe from India. They've just landed at Heathrow. They've got the NHS job offer in hand, the big winter coat they bought just for this and this. Just this huge sense of arrival.
It's the classic new life story, isn't it?
It is. It's the beginning of the movie. It's romantic. It's exciting. It feels like this is it, the happily ever after.
And you need that. You really do. You need that optimism to make a move that big.
But today, we're going to look at the script for the rest of the movie. You know, the part that usually gets cut to a quick montage?
Ah, yeah.
Because right after that airport scene, the reality of the UK immigration system kicks in. And that reality, it's not about patient care. It's not about tea breaks.
It's about compliance.
It's about compliance, codes, and, well, the terrifying thought that one tiny administrative mistake could send you packing.
That's it, exactly. That's where the dream collides with the bureaucracy. We all think the hard part is getting the job offer, right? Passing the interview, getting sponsored. But the source we're looking at today argues that getting the job is just the prelude. The real challenge is keeping it.
So let's get into our source for this deep dive. It's fascinating because of what it isn't.
Right.
It is not a recruitment brochure. It's not some government how-to guide. It's a document from an immigration lawyer, and it's called Professional Immigration Consultations. But honestly,
it reads like a military strategy guide.
it really does. It's this aggressive, very detailed, individual legal strategy. And that word strategy, it makes it sound like you're entering a conflict zone.
Or at least a terrain where you need a tactical map just to survive.
And this map is drawn for a very specific person, a registered nurse, an adult nurse moving to the UK on the skilled worker route.
That's a crucial point. This isn't for just anyone. It's for the people who are, the backbone of the NHS workforce. The source is very clear about it.
Who is it for then?
Candidates who are getting their nursing and midwifery council, the NMC registration, or maybe nurses who are already here and are just switching employers, switching trusts.
The whole premise seems to be about shifting the nurse's mindset. I mean, most people would think, I'm an employee, the hospital HR team, they handle the visa stuff. I just need to show up.
And that's the passive approach.
Why is that a problem?
Well, this source argues that the passive approach is dangerous. It says there's a huge gap between being employed and being legally secure.
Right.
And the goal of this whole consultation is to bridge that gap. It's about moving from, I hope HR got it right, to what the author calls immigration stability.
I was really struck by how the text says, and I'm quoting here, this is not a template. It warns against that one-size-fits-all advice you see on online forums.
Because forums deal in generalities and immigration law, it punishes specifics. The source really hones in on a major pain point. It calls gray areas.
Let's unpack that. I mean, in a system as rigid as the UK Home Office, how does a nurse even end up in a gray area? It seems like it should be black and white.
You'd think so.
You either have a visa or you don't.
You would think, but the gray areas are where people get tripped up. It often happens through, verbal agreements or what the text calls on the off chance arrangements.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say a manager asks you to pick up some extra shifts. You want to help, you want the extra money, but maybe those shifts push you over the 20-hour supplemental work limit your visa allows for a second job.
And if that was just a quick chat in the hallway.
Exactly. Or let's say there's a gap between when your old visa ended and the new one started, and someone in HR says, oh, don't worry, you can keep working while it processes.
Right.
But without written proof, without a clear legal standing, that conversation is worthless if the Home Office decides to audit you.
And the source is ruthless about this. No oral agreements.
If it is not documented, it did not happen. And if it didn't happen on paper, but you did the work, you might be in breach of your visa. That's a gray area. And gray areas can get people deported.
So to fight this, the lawyer lays out a framework. It's built on 3 pillars, and I think we should go through them. The first is legal certainty, which we've sort of touched on.
Eliminating all ambiguity.
Right. But the second one,
Yeah.
The second one is a term I have never seen applied to a person before. Audit readiness.
I love this concept.
Audit readiness.
Yeah, usually we talk about a corporation being audit ready, a bank or a tax firm, but this strategy applies it to a human being.
It sounds so intense, like you have to live your life constantly looking over your shoulder.
I think it's meant to be empowering, actually. Think about the anxiety of being an immigrant. You always have that low-level fear, right? What if they ask for a paper I lost 3 years ago?
Yeah, that's true.
Being audit ready means you never have that fear. It means that at any moment, a Tuesday afternoon, a Sunday morning, You are ready for a government inspection.
So no more scrambling to find a shoebox full of receipts under your bed.
Exactly. You become a walking, talking, fully compliant file. You go from being this passive participant who is just a nurse to a proactive legal entity. You know your own status better than your employer does.
Which brings us to the third pillar, long-term sustainability.
Right. The source really hammers this point. Short-term fixes are traps. You might solve today's problem, getting the visa issued, but if you do it in a messy way, you create a roadblock for yourself 3 years later when you want to apply for indefinite leave to remain.
It's about playing the long game. The goal isn't just the visa.
It's citizenship.
It's citizenship.
Exactly, and that needs a clean, unbroken chain of legality from day one. If you have a 6-month gap or some compliance breach in year 1, it will come back to haunt you in year 5.
Okay, I want to pivot now to the tech side of this, because this is where the strategy feels very, very modern. The source talks about something called the legal snapshot. This is how the employer sees you. And the document takes a really hard line on physical documents.
This is probably the most critical takeaway right here. Throw away the paper.
Seriously.
The source explicitly rejects physical documents as a legal basis for proving your status. It relies exclusively on the digital UK VI e-visa system.
That feels, counterintuitive. I think we're all conditioned to believe that a physical stamp in a passport or a plastic biometric residence permit, a BRP card, that's the real proof.
Of course.
If I'm that nurse, I want to hold that card in my hand. It feels safe. So why is the source so against it?
Because while it feels safe to you, to the legal system, it's actually a liability. Physical documents are static. A card issued 2 years ago tells an employer that you had a right to work 2 years ago.
It doesn't tell them what your status is today.
Exactly. Your status could have been curtailed yesterday, but the card in your pocket still looks perfectly valid. Plus, they can be lost, stolen, forged. The source calls relying on them outdated.
So what's the strategy pushing for instead?
The right to work share code. It's basically a digital key. It's generated by the Home Office database in real time.
So it's live verification.
It is.
Yeah.
When you give that code to an employer, they aren't looking at a card you carried around. They are looking directly into the government's live data.
Oh, okay.
And here's why the lawyer insists on this. This is the most important legal concept in the whole document. The statutory excuse.
Statutory excuse. It sounds like something a teenager makes up when they miss curfew. Sorry, Mom, I have a statutory excuse. But in UK employment law, this is huge.
It is the single most important concept for an employer. It's their shield.
A shield against what?
If a hospital hires someone who, it turns out, is an illegal worker, that hospital faces massive fines. We're talking up to £45,000 per worker, and they can lose their license to hire any foreigners at all.
Which would. That would basically shut down their ability to staff the hospital.
Correct. But if the employer performed the check correctly, they have a statutory excuse. It means they can turn to the Home Office and say, look, we checked the official system, it said they were legal, so we are not liable for this.
So by forcing the digital check with a share code, the nurse is literally handing the employer that shield on a silver platter.
Exactly. And this is the genius of the strategy. You're not just saying, please hire me, I'm a good nurse. You're saying, I am a liability-free hire. Here is my share code. Run this, and you get a 100% statutory excuse. You are safe.
You're making the HR manager's life easier. You're basically doing their compliance work for them.
And in an overworked NHS trust, where the HR department is just drowning in paperwork, being the candidate who is pre-verified and audit-ready, well, that puts you at the top of the pile.
It's a real competitive advantage.
A huge one. The source frames it as reducing the load on compliance teams. You become the path of least resistance.
I want to clarify something, though. We're talking a lot about immigration law, but this is for nurses. The source mentions professional readiness. How does the medical side of this overlap with the legal side? Because you can have a visa, but not actually be allowed to work as a nurse. Right.
This is where those gray areas we talked about can get really, really dangerous. You can have a valid skilled worker visa, but if your professional registration isn't in order, you can't legally do the job your visa is tied to.
Right, because the visa is for a specific role. If I'm sponsored as a nurse, I have to be a nurse.
Correct. So the consultation involves verifying the registered nurse adult status and, crucially, active registration with the NMC, the Nursing and Midwifery Council. It also checks that you meet the requirements for a Band 5 position.
Which is the standard starting tier for international nurses in the NHS.
Yes. But imagine a scenario where a nurse's NMC registration lapses. Or maybe they're a new arrival who hasn't quite passed their practical exam, the OSCE, but they're still working full nursing shifts.
So they're doing the work, but legally they aren't registered yet.
Exactly. So technically, they aren't fulfilling the role of a registered nurse at that moment. And that disconnect creates a compliance breach. The Home Office sees a visa for a nurse, the hospital sees an employee, but the NMC sees someone who isn't registered.
That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
It is. The source says the goal is no legal surprises. That should be the motto for everyone. Employers hate surprises. This strategy just makes sure you are ready to work here and now.
Let's talk about the consultation process itself. The source describes it almost like an educational service. It's not just, give me your money, I'll file the form. It feels more like coaching.
It is coaching. It's empowerment through education. The lawyer actually explains the digital-only protocols to the client. They teach the nurse how to handle the right-to-work check themselves.
But why does the nurse need to know that? Can't they just stand there and let HR do their thing?
You'd hope so. But the source implies, and I think rightly, that not every HR department is fully up to speed. The UK system digitized very, very fast.
Oh, interesting.
You still have some old-school HR managers who might demand to see a physical BRP card because, well, that's what they've done for 20 years.
So if the nurse just hands over the card because they were asked, they're playing into the old, riskier system.
Precisely. And relying on that card doesn't give the employer the strongest statutory excuse anymore. This strategy trains the nurse to be the expert in the room, to politely but firmly say, actually, my status is proven via this Avisa Share code. This gives you the statutory excuse you need and is the current Home Office standard.
That completely flips the power dynamic. Usually, the immigrant worker feels vulnerable, almost like they're begging for the job. Here, they're guiding the process.
It eliminates doubt. And in recruitment, doubt is a deal breaker. If an employer isn't sure if you're legal or they think it's going to be a hassle, they just move on to the next candidate. If you can prove it instantly, you get the offer.
So it takes away the risk premium of hiring an international worker.
That is a great way to put it. We've covered the what and the how. Let's talk about the why. The source frames this whole thing in an investment. It says, professional immigration consultations are an investment in stability, not an expense.
And that's the key takeaway, I think. If you see legal fees as just a transaction, a cost to get a piece of paper, you'll try to do it as cheaply as you can.
Use a template, ask a friend what they did.
Exactly. But if you see it as investing in the actual foundation of your new life,
Then the value calculation changes completely.
you're not paying for a form, you're paying for sleep. You're paying for the knowledge that if the Home Office runs an audit tomorrow, you are safe.
And what about for the employer?
They get risk mitigation. They get a worker who isn't going to cause a scandal or a fine. They get peace of mind.
It's interesting, isn't it? We usually think of skills for a nurse as clinical skills. You know, can you draw blood? Can you run a triage?
Can you handle a difficult patient?
Right. But this suggests that in the modern world, bureaucratic competence is actually a core job skill.
That's a really profound way to put it. You have to be skilled at the administration of your own existence. You can be the best clinical nurse on the ward, but if you can't manage your compliance, you are a liability to the hospital.
The administration of your own existence. That is both terrifying and incredibly accurate.
It is. And look, the UK is at the forefront of this digitization of borders, but it's a global trend. The idea that your right to be in a country is tied to a database entry, not a stamp in a book, that's becoming the norm everywhere.
So to bring it all back together, we have a nurse, she's talented, she's ready to work, but instead of just relying on hope, she adopts this audit-ready mindset.
Rejects the gray areas.
She insists on digital verification.
And by doing all that, she secures her own future. Her medical skills get her the interview. But it's the legal strategy that keeps her in the country.
It just highlights how complex the modern workplace has become for global talent. It's not enough to be good at your job.
You have to be good at being employed. And that's a skill that requires just as much study as the medical side.
As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. We've been talking about nurses in immigration, which is obviously a very high-stakes situation. But this concept of being audit-ready, I think it applies to all of us.
How you mean?
Well, think about your own professional life. I mean, most of us, even if we aren't migrants, we have our career history scattered across messy inboxes, old hard drives, dusty file folders.
Yeah.
If you had to prove your qualifications, your old contracts, your rights to your work, right now, this second, Could you do it?
That's a great point. We kind of rely on it's probably around here somewhere.
Exactly. We rely on luck. We rely on the fact that no one's asked us yet. What this source teaches is that relying on luck is a bad strategy.
Right.
So what if we treated our own career documentation with that same rigor, prioritizing absolute digital proof, instant accessibility? How much more secure would we all feel?
We could all use a little more statutory excuse in our own lives, regardless of where we live.
Something to think about while you organize your Dropbox this weekend. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.